What dark? The long dark. And I couldn't see it, and it lasted forever. So cold, but I can't remember. They looked up guiltily as the waitress set down their drinks. Wynn laced her hands around her cup and stared at the table. You never get over something like that, Martha murmured. No, I think about her every single day. Wynn glanced up, her voice trembling. Dennis, too. But why? Martha asked urgently. Why does Blake feel so differently about Dennis? He never saw Dennis with Elizabeth like I did, and she told me things about the two of them. Most people couldn't get close to Dennis, but he could be sweet and gentle. A faint smile came at the memory. He was handsome and kind of wild. He was romantic. He made her feel special. That's exactly what she told me. He made her feel special. Martha closed her eyes, struggling to reconcile the two opposite images. She must have known then. I mean, you share things in a relationship that no one else can share. Blake never liked Dennis. Went back a long way. When Blake was a freshman, he made all-conference in basketball and second-team All-State. It was almost certain he'd make first-team All-State his sophomore year. And then Dennis transferred here from another school. The coach was ecstatic because Dennis had a great reputation already. All coach could think about were these two superstars being teammates the next 3 years. So you're saying Blake was jealous of Dennis? Wynn frowned. Blake had played against him twice when they were freshmen. He said Dennis was a dirty player. Reluctantly, she nodded. He was probably right about that. Dennis was a real hothead. He could be a terrible show-off, and he liked to take over, so Blake wasn't thrilled about him coming to Bedford. And then Dennis made all the state that year, but Blake did it. So there really was a rivalry between them. After a while, Blake started accusing Dennis of trying to injure him on the court. Like when Blake was up in the air, Dennis would get under him as he came down so Blake would hurt his ankle. Blake's always had his heart set on a scholarship. If he got hurt and couldn't play, then Dennis would have more chances to score, not to mention more exposure and a better reputation. Ben gave a weary sigh. That part could have been true, too. I know Blake's not a liar, but that was between Blake and Dennis. It had nothing to do with Elizabeth. Dennis was different with her. He wouldn't have hurt her. Wynn? Martha leaned slowly forward, her eyes glued to Wynn's troubled face. I'm sorry, but I've got to ask this. I have to know. What do you think happened to Dennis? To her distress, Wynn suddenly began to cry. She buried her face in her hands and sobbed softly, and Martha grabbed her arms, her own heart wrenching. I think he's dead, Martha. I think he killed himself. Martha's expression froze, horror and sadness in every line. Oh, Wynn, but how? I think when he heard she was dead, he just gave up. He told her once that he couldn't live without her. She told me that. He said that. And at that time, we laughed because it sounded so dramatic. Oh, Martha, I'm so sorry now that I laughed. Shush, Wynn. Drink this. It'll make you feel better. Martha's hands were shaking badly, but she managed to guide the cup to Wynn's mouth, then gulp her own drink down. The melted marshmallows hit her stomach like rocks. Fighting down a pain of nausea, Martha forced her eyes away from Wynn and stared out into the late afternoon. The empty street gleamed wetly. The sidewalks were deserted. A traffic light blinked, turning puddles into pools of dark red blood. Her eyes went wide. Stiffening, she pressed her nose against the glass and squinted hard, trying to see beyond the gray pale of light. Then she wiped steam from the window pane and looked again, a slow chill crawling over her. She thought she'd seen something just then, something caught between the shafts of pale light that speckled the sidewalk, something that had been there for a long time, like an image on the very edge of consciousness, not quite formed. Is somebody there? It's hot in here, Martha mumbled. I need some air. And before Wynn could say a word, Martha put some money on the table, excused herself, and stepped out onto the sidewalk. The street lay before her, rain-washed and silent. A long, slow breath of wind trailed soggy leaves through the gutter, and she stepped back from them as if they were alive. There was no one out here. The quiet was almost unnatural. Martha? Oh, God, Wynn, you gave me a heart attack. Martha fell back against her friend, gasping. Sorry, are you okay? I was getting worried. I thought Martha's eyes darted nervously up the street, probing, finding nothing. I just thought I was going to faint for a second. I'm okay now. We'd better go then. Now that I've ruined our afternoon. Wynn, you didn't ruin anything. I never should have asked those questions. It's my fault. It's not your fault. It's just all messed up. I'm all messed up. Martha laughed, throwing an arm around her shoulders. You're not messed up. We're all messed up. At that, Wynn gave into a chuckle. Poor us. Yes, poor us. And besides that, it's really getting cold out here now. I know, Wynn said dismally, pulling up the hood of her jacket. Oh, well, at least we don't have far to go. Small comfort, Martha thought uneasily, and she plodded alongside Win without speaking. They'd gone about 3 blocks when Win suddenly stopped and turned. What is it? Martha demanded. I'm not sure, Win looked puzzled and then shrugged. I thought, oh, nothing. But she glanced back over her shoulder as they started walking again. Win, Martha said stubbornly, and Win gave her a sheepish grin. Crazy, I thought I heard footsteps, but there's nobody back there. It was probably just some leaves or something. Before you know it, I'll be imagining Mr. Smith's mannequin is coming after us. At Martha's bewildered look, she giggled. Mr. Smith's mannequin back there, didn't you see it? He always has it out front of his store and takes it back in about this time every day. Oh, great, I almost had hysterics over a dummy. Martha forced a laugh. Hey, I'm supposed to be the one with the overactive imagination, not you. Wynn nodded, but they exchanged nervous glances and began moving in half-trot towards school. Do you see Connor? Wynn asked. Martha shook her head, a strange dread growing in the pit of her stomach. He'll be here. You don't have to wait. Don't be silly. Oh darn, Wynn checked her watch and looked helplessly at Martha. I'm supposed to babysit, for crying out loud. Then go on. Connor will be here in a second, I'm sure. Martha, I'm not leaving you alone. I'm a big girl, Martha kidded, giving her a push. I have to go in and get some stuff from my locker anyway. I'll wait under the overhang. I won't even get wet. Are you sure? Wynn asked worriedly. I mean, Bedford's not like Chicago. I don't think we can go out at night alone here without guns. We can, most of the time. Get out of here, Martha laughed, waving her away. I'll talk to you later. Are you sure? Connor remembers you're here. Wynn, goodbye. Okay then. Wynn took off at a run, pausing at the corner to turn and wave. Bye. Bye, Martha stood there with her hand up, rain trickling down her cheeks, running into her collar. I think he's dead, Martha. I think he killed himself. She looked back at the school looming against her starless sky, and her blood chilled within her. Wynn, come back. Please don't leave me alone.